Rory, welcome to the Whoop Podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be on. I'm a big fan of Whoop and the podcast, and it's an honor for me.
Oh, well, thanks, man. Your career has been fascinating for me because we're both 30 years old, and I've watched the success that you've had from like an enormously young age. And so it's been interesting for me to think at like age 17 or 18, wow, what must it be like to be competing at this incredibly high level? So congratulations on your career and just where you are today.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Now, was it always obvious to you that you were going to be a professional golfer?
Yeah. I think it was definitely obvious to me. I think it was pretty obvious to a lot of the people around me as well. I grew up in a golfing family. Even in like a golfing community, it seemed like everything revolved around the golf club. It was a very social place, but you know, all of my friends that I still have, I met at the golf club. I did the same, you know, so it's always been in my life. It's always been in my blood, and it was the one sport out of everything that I played as a kid that I really excelled at. And from the age of like 6 or 7 years old, I would tell everyone I was going to be the best golfer in the world.
I love that.
To be able to live that dream and
it's amazing.
Get to this point is pretty cool. Sometimes it's hard to think back on it because you don't want it to seem like, you know, this is my life and this is what I do. I don't want to get all nostalgic about it, and because I've still got so much to do and so much I still want to achieve. But sometimes it's nice to sit back and be like, you know, this has been a pretty cool journey.
Yeah, just gratitude.
Yeah.
It's a big theme actually for people that I've spoken to on this podcast even, is the importance of gratitude.
Yeah.
Has that played a role in the way you think about your career?
Definitely, and I think one of the things about being a golfer is people only see, it's a very individual sport and people only see what you do, but I've definitely got a lot of gratitude for the people around me that helped me get to this point. So my coach, Michael Bannon, I've had the same coach for 24 years. You know,
right,
he started coaching
90% of your life.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the fact that I've had the same coach and he's brought me from, you know, a little kid that, you know, just taught me how to grip a golf club to being where I am now, my mum and dad, my friends, my, you know, extended family, everyone around me, I have gratitude towards them because they're the ones that do a lot of the work that the people don't see and maybe don't get the credit for. You know, I'm the one that stands up on the 18th green on a Sunday and holds the trophy, but there's so many other people that are a part of it that, you know, that's what I'm really grateful for.
Well, one of the, and we spoke about this quickly on the phone, like one of the best commercials I've ever seen in my life was the Nike commercial with you aspiring to be Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
And again, we're the same age, so I can picture you watching those Tiger Woods highlights at every phase of your career. And then the iconic commercial ends with you, walking down the first tee next to Tiger.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
I'm getting goosebumps just sort of.
It's a commercial
really
literally
cool.
that gave me goosebumps, and it must be so fascinating for you to have followed that journey.
It is. You know, Tiger was a huge hero of mine growing up, and you know, sometimes they say that you should never meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed, but I've gotten to know Tiger a lot over the last few years, and I haven't been disappointed. He's always been so good to me, and he's been really good with my parents.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really cool. Like, I think he valued his relationship with his parents so much, and his dad, and I think he sees a sort of similar relationship that I have with mine, and every time I see him, he asks about them. So the fact that, I idolized him and I had posters of him in my bedroom wall, and the fact that now I get to compete against him, and that's a cool thing as well. I mean, again, I maybe don't think about it as much as I should because I don't want to get all nostalgic about it, but if it just goes to show, if you have a dream and you work hard enough at it and you do the right things, you know, anything's
possible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and shout out to Nike for an epic commercial because
Exactly.
they captured that incredibly well.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your father. We both are also only children.
Okay.
And so I know what that's also like in terms of building a relationship with your parents and how much also your parents can invest in you, right? Because there's just so much of a focus. And I imagine that was true for you in building your golf career.
It was. I mean, it's... So I had I was raised, I'm an only child, but the jobs that my parents worked, my dad would work sort of in the evening times in bars and restaurants and stuff, and my mum worked night shifts in a factory. So it was always this, I always either spent time with my mum or my dad. It was never both of them together because they were always working. So I remember as a kid saying to them, like, why can't we be like a normal family?
Yeah.
And obviously at that point I didn't understand, and they were working so hard. Like, my mom didn't have to work night shifts, but she was working to make more money to help support me and try.
And your dream.
And my dream. And, you know, and it was always my dream. It was never theirs. And I think that's important. Right? It's very important. They encouraged me and they supported me, but they never pushed me in a certain direction, which now as 30 years old and, you know, I appreciate that because I know a little bit more about the world, and I've seen what happens to these child prodigies that are great at something and their parents push them a certain direction. You know, they burn out by the time they're in their mid-20s. So I really appreciated what my mom and dad did for me.
Would you say that's like, how did you avoid that, right? I mean, there's so many examples of child prodigies, and you were a child prodigy because you were winning all these tournaments. You were the youngest person to, you know, make a number of accomplishments on both the European Tour and the PA Tour. How did you prevent that in your life?
Again, it was my dream. It was no one else's.
Yeah. It's an inner belief.
It is. It's something that has to be inside of you. It's even something you can't be told what to do. You can't be. I'm stubborn by nature, so if someone tells me I can't do something, I want to do it.
Yeah. Sure.
And yeah, I think as well, when I was sort of climbing that ladder and trying to become the player that I wanted to be, I had people around me that didn't let me get too big for my station, right? They didn't let my ego inflate. They didn't, you know, I still remembered where I came from. I remembered that, you know, my mom and dad will always be my mom and dad. I always had a pretty good sense of perspective on things, that even if I become the best golfer in the world, it doesn't change who I am as a person or how I should treat people, or, you know, so I've always, you know, my parents always instilled that as well. It doesn't matter how good or how big or how whatever you are, you still have to be a nice person and be polite and have manners and all that stuff. So that was big as well.
Well, you clearly carry that. I mean, I think you're an unbelievable ambassador for the game in that regard. And it's an interesting case study on having the same core group of people around you and how stabilizing that can be.
Yeah.
Because you hear a lot of stories, I feel like, of professional athletes or child prodigies in different regards, and they have this sort of evolving group of people around them. And, you know, I think a lack of that support group probably can be quite difficult as you get more and more successful.
100%, and I think as well, not all those people that start to come into your life are aligned in the same beliefs, and you know, they don't have your best interests at heart all of the time. They're maybe looking out for themselves, or they're trying to advance what they're doing. So, you know, to be able to keep my core group of friends that see me as who I was when I was a kid rather than who I am now is very important.
I want to talk a little bit about sort of two different phases of your career. So early stage career, and then how you think about your career today. Mm-hmm. When you were, you know, 18 or 19, what was the sort of typical day like, as if you think about, hey, I want to be the best golfer I can be? Yeah,
it was definitely more practice driven.
Golf centric.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't really watching what I ate. It was golf. It was golf. And
how much golf would you play in a day?
I mean, when I was a kid, like that, you know, 15, 16, 17, I mean, there was days where I'd play 54 holes.
Yeah.
I'd go around 3 times, and I'd hit balls, and that's one of the great things about Northern Ireland where I grew up. In the summertime when I was off school, it would get light at 6:30 or 6 or even earlier, but it wouldn't get dark until 10 p.m.
Right.
So I had this huge window of time where I could play golf and just hang out at the golf club, and that was really important as well, you know, and that's where I honed my skills, but I also met my friends, and I did all, you know, as I said, you know, it was a real hub of the town where I grew up. So I played a lot, I practiced a lot. Golf was what I did, it was my life. I you know, when I went to bed at night, I was thinking about the next day going to the course. I had probably 2 of my 3 meals a day at the golf club, all that sort of stuff.
And if you think about how that's shifted a little bit. Like, when did you first introduce fitness? I mean, you're a strong guy. It's very clear you're a strong guy.
So I had back problems when I was 18 or 19.
Okay.
I had a herniated disc, L4, L5. And I was told when I was 19 that, you know, if I didn't sort this out, if I didn't get stronger, if I wasn't more diligent on the health side of things, that my career could only last a handful of years.
Right.
So that's when it really hit home to me. I'm like, oh, I need to.
Scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
Especially as a golfer, you think your career is going to last forever, and it can if you stay healthy.
Yeah, you figure, hey, I'm going to be able to play this until I'm 80 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the beauties about golf is that you can. But it really hit home with me. So after that, and after basically getting into an MRI scanner every 4 weeks to see how my back was.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
It was so. That's when I was like, okay, I need to get stronger. I need to put a structure in place so that this isn't going to be an ongoing problem. So that was when I was sort of like 20 years old. So 2010 was when I started, and then 2011 is when I started. You know, I won my first major then, and so I always correlated fitness and getting in shape and making my health a priority. I correlated that with playing my best golf, and that's why I've continued to do that since.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Right after you introduce fitness, we're talking a matter of months, really, where your career starts to go onto a different inflection. I think people underestimate, so the casual observer of golf underestimates just how insanely mental the game is. And in 2011, right, you're leading the Masters, and you've reflected on this as being a high for you, like in you know, how it's shaped your career.
Yeah.
Talk about the mindset you had that day. You know, we're talking about the Sunday of the Masters. You're, I think, leading by 4 shots.
Yeah.
What was your mindset going into that round, if you reflect on it, and where did it potentially go wrong?
Yeah, so I think back to 2011 and the Masters, and on the last day, I was trying to be someone else that I wasn't. You know, I was almost trying to be like Tiger Woods. I was trying to be hyper-focused, not look at anyone, not talk to anyone, like real business-like, and that's never been me. I approach it a different way. I play my best when I'm a little more happy-go-lucky and relaxed and almost like casual about it.
You do seem relaxed and casual about it, like watching as a fan.
And that's how I play my best golf.
Yeah.
But I thought to win the Masters, I need to be like this.
You need to be a different person.
I need to be like Tiger.
And
that was my mindset, and that's where it went wrong for me.
And so you almost embodied a slightly different version of yourself just for that round.
Yeah. And I think as well, at that point, I wasn't as into the mental side of things as I am now. So, you know, I'd watch the coverage in the morning, and, you know, I'd maybe hear what they're saying about me or about the other players, or
so you'd be paying attention to the commentary of the tournament you were playing in, versus, say, ignoring it or focusing on yourself.
Exactly.
And today, would you say you focus more on yourself?
Way more, yeah, way
really
more. I don't like. One of my pet peeves at golf tournaments is the Golf Channel's always on.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, why is everyone watching this? It's doing none of us any good.
Oh, literally, it's on the television.
It's on the television,
at the
like
tournament.
In the locker rooms or in the, you know, so it's hard to avoid it.
That's a great observation.
But,
yeah.
You know, it would be like, you know, guys getting ready for the World Series game, and they're watching the pre-game analysis. And it's like, geez, I don't think we really need to see that.
Yeah, I would imagine that's quite distracting.
Yeah, so that's why, you know, I made a promise to myself a few years ago. I'm never going to watch, even, you know, you can go on in the mornings and watch like PGA Tour Live and see what the morning groups are doing, and maybe see how the golf course is playing or the pin positions or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't even, because if I see a guy hit it in a spot, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look very nice over there. You know, it just
changes your mindset.
Exactly. So I you know, the last few years I made a promise. When I'm at tournaments, I don't watch any golf. I don't listen to what they say. I don't read any news articles. I shut myself off from all of that.
And where does your phone fit into that mix?
So I'm I'm a big believer in less is more with phones.
Totally.
And I read Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport last year, and that really opened my eyes to what happens to your brain when you're on your phone for such a long amount of time. Or he talks about prefrontal cortex and how that inhibits your cognition and decision making. And so I try to, I'm not going to restrict myself from my phone, but I have an app called Freedom, which basically it's a URL blocker, which blocks like Instagram, blocks Twitter, blocks anything. You can block certain words, like in a Google search. So, so nothing about myself would come up. So it just
which is important, yeah. So you kind of create this lane that you're playing in.
Yeah. So that's. And I like to switch off from when I'm at a golf tournament. When I get back, like last week we were in Mexico and I got into Narcos, Mexico. I was like, I'm in Mexico, I might. So I couldn't wait to get back to the room and put on like a couple episodes of.
So you'll watch a television show or something to sort of decompress.
Yeah, watch a television show. When my wife travels with me, we do jigsaw puzzles.
Oh, that's cool.
We puzzle a lot. She loves doing them. She's a huge advocate of not being on your phone. Like anytime I ring her, like she doesn't have her phone with her.
That's healthy because I imagine it would actually be distracting for you too if she's on her phone all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think I have a healthy relationship with my phone. I don't think that was always the case. I would have been on Twitter and Instagram a lot, and I would have, but it's so habit forming, and it's, I think for me, if I'm going to use my phone, I want to use it intentionally and not because of a habit. And that's the big thing.
Yeah, I think in general, people's brains are overstimulated and probably people's bodies are understimulated.
Yes, exactly.
And you have an advantage as a professional golfer to be on the right side of that equation.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've approached that in a really smart way.
Definitely. I read a thing, just one more point on this. I read a thing, the biggest thing that happened in the 20th century was people realized what overconsumption of food and drink and did to their bodies.
Yeah.
So people exercised and they went on diets. And I think in the 21st century, people are going to realize that the overconsumption of information is going to make you do this like mental diet, mental detox where you have to get away from it and you have to put yourself on a sort of an information diet.
Totally.
Basically, because that's, with mental health and with all these other things that are so prevalent in this day and age, I think that's where, that's probably going to be one of the biggest discoveries of the next few years.
I completely agree. I actually think we're going to get to a place where like cell phone service is either on or off, and you can actually go into areas that are like intentionally cut off.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a focus on the people that you're with or the experience that you're having.
Yeah, I used to love getting on airplanes that didn't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
because
right.
You're like, this is gonna be a nice couple hours of just me time. But obviously that's not very, there's Wi-Fi everywhere you go nowadays.
Now, if we go back for a second, so 2011, you have this master's experience. I imagine right afterwards you're in a bad place. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
Yeah, very fair. It was tough. My mom and dad weren't there, and I didn't, the night of was rough. I had a few friends there, and it was tough, but we had dinner with David Fedex.
Oh, cool.
Which was like,
He's a character.
He cheered me up and my mood was boosted. So, and I didn't talk, my mom and dad were back in the UK, so I didn't talk to them until the next morning.
Okay.
And when I talked to my dad, it was fine. He was like, look, you'll have more chances, it's fine. But when I spoke to my mom, I just broke down.
Yeah.
I just was like, it was rough. And I think I needed that.
Like a reset.
Talk with her and to cry and let it all out. And after that, I was motivated. I was like, this is what I showed, or, what happened yesterday it's not going to define me, and that isn't who I am as a golfer or a person. And I'm going to take this experience and I'm going to use it to make me better. And that's what I tried to do.
And when you say that, like, are you just saying that sort of once to yourself, or are you actually creating a process in which you're reiterating that to yourself, some form of visualization or meditation or anything like that?
Yeah, I think you're creating a process, but you're also, sometimes the fear of failure is a good thing.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was, I never want that to happen again. And I'm never going to, I've always prided myself in learning from my mistakes, and I made a lot of mistakes that day and that week. And maybe the next time you're not going to do everything perfect, but you're going to be a little bit better and a little bit better. So for me, it was just this gradual build up of, okay, the next tournament I play, what can I do better than I did then? And it was just putting the building blocks in place to get to a point where all I wanted was another opportunity. I was like, I want to get into the final grip of a major again, and I want to show myself and people that what they saw at the Masters wasn't a true reflection of who I am.
So then the Sunday of the US Open in 2011, you're playing a phenomenal tournament. How is your mindset different? Were you all of a sudden just focused on being yourself versus the Tiger version of Rory?
Focused on being myself. I wrapped myself in my own little bubble. I remember I watched a movie in the morning. I was trying to do anything I could to not think about what was going to happen that day.
Yeah.
So I remember I watched one of my favorite movies is The Dark Knight, Batman.
Oh, cool.
And I watched the movie. I watched that in the morning, and that sort of put me
So
in
you woke up and watched The Dark Knight?
Well, I woke up, I had some breakfast.
Yep.
And these late tea times, there's a lot of time to kill. If you wake up at 7 in the morning and you're not teeing off to 3, it's like, okay,
8 hours
what can I do? So, and The Dark Knight's actually a pretty long movie as well.
It's like 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So I watched that in the morning and sort of put me in a good place, and took my mind away from thinking, okay, how's the first going to play, and how's the second going to play, and what happens if he does this? Or I got away from all of that, and I just put my mind in a different space.
And when you play in any tournament, are you visualizing like where you want to put each shot before a round, or is that mostly happening in the round itself?
I think for me, that happens on the range. So I'll try to replicate a certain shot that I'm trying to hit on the course.
That makes sense.
So if I say Congressional that week, it was a 3-wood off the first. So I'd try to recreate that first tee shot in my mind. Okay, I'm going to try to hit a little draw. This pin out on the range is actually the right bunker, and you're trying to take it off that. So you're always on the range is where that would a little closer to when you're teeing off.
So you'll recreate the hole and the shot right there on the range.
Yeah.
And will you go so far as to like picture them announcing your name or anything like how deep of a visualization will you actually do?
No, and I'll get to a point. We'll talk about this later. Last year at the British Open at Portrush, where I probably should have done that, but no, it's more just the golf.
Yeah.
It's not really anything around. But I remember one of the things from that week at the US Open, I watched my body language back from the Masters, especially on the Sunday when things started to go wrong.
You rewatched the round?
Yeah.
Okay,
and
cool.
I became very closed off and looking at the ground and shoulders sort of rolled in and not, sort of creating this positive, posture. So one of my big keys for for the whole week in the US Open, but especially the last round, no matter what happened, was to keep my eye line above the heads of the spectators.
Oh, I love that.
So that was always something. That was my key thought for the week.
Well, you have great posture, which kind of explains that mindset.
Yeah, work on it.
Because you're probably, you're like that all the time.
But yeah, it's something. But I think as well, just sitting up and looking, it makes you feel a little more confident.
Yeah, you're kind of like in the, you're projecting a version of yourself that you want, right?
Exactly.
And if we think about your preparation sort of between the round finishing and the next round, mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you're doing between rounds? Because, okay, say your round ends at 6 p.m. or mm-hmm. something, like go from there.
Yeah, so I try to eat straight away because one of the things I've learned from wearing Whoop is that if I eat too close to bedtime, I don't sleep well.
Yeah.
So I try to eat straight away. So if I finish a round that does end pretty late, I'll probably just grab dinner at the course or dinner on the way home at like a Whole Foods or something and eat and make sure that I eat early enough that I give myself at least like a 2-hour window to when I go to bed.
That makes sense.
Blue light blocking glasses. I started wearing those.
Yeah.
It's been so good for me just to sort of start that wind down process.
And you get an enormous amount of slow wave and REM sleep. We'll talk about your data in a second, but I bet that that's helped a lot because I've noticed it in my data as well.
Yeah, so that's been a big thing, especially like whenever I am at home, the TV's on and whatever, and if you are looking at your phone, and they're so good nowadays, these glasses, that they just look like normal glasses.
Totally.
So I do that. If I don't like doing it, but if I really want to get a good night's sleep, I take a cold shower.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of it. It's tough for me to do, but it really helps.
I completely agree.
It really, really helps. So my preparation, I don't, some guys will get into the ice bath and feel like that's good for them and stuff, but for me, if I'm taking a shower for the last 30 seconds of it, I'll just say, okay, just, bear this for 30 seconds, it's going to help. And so that's really my routine. I everything now is geared towards, how can I get the best rest possible going into the next day? And that's, for the last, I don't know, was it 8 months that I've worn Whoop? I've sort of started to learn my habits. I've learned what works for me. I've tried things that haven't worked for me that work for other people.
Sure.
And, but I think having that mindset that you're always thinking about the next day and wanting a green recovery and wanting to sleep well, and that's important.
So you mentioned Whoop. How did you first find out about Whoop?
So I found out about Whoop probably 2 or 3 years before I started wearing it. There's a couple of trainers on the PGA Tour that were wearing it and were talking to me about it, and I thought it was really interesting. But for me as a golfer, I was like, well, I'm not an endurance athlete, so I need a heart rate monitor 24/7, all that sort of stuff. And so I sort of didn't do it. I wore an Apple Watch for a bit, and that was fine, and it sort of tracks a little bit, but not much. And I've used some other HRV devices and stuff that measures your central nervous system. But it was once I started to learn a little bit more about sympathetic and parasympathetic and central nervous system, HRV, what all that means. And I think, I started wearing Whoop because I just wanted to know more about my body and myself and how I recover, and I just wanted to optimize what I do. And I think in this day and age in golf, with the technology that's out there, everyone's got closer together. The difference between the number 1 ranked player in the world and the number 100 is actually pretty small.
Yeah.
So for me, I want to do everything I possibly can to get an advantage. And for me, Whoop is one of those things that can give me an advantage.
Well, it's super cool for me being here with you and also talking about it and having you on the product. And I think I discovered that you were wearing Whoop because you won the Canadian Open. And I was like, oh, boom, there's a Whoop strap.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people would text me, hey, I think Rory's on Whoop.
Yeah, so I actually wore it I got it and wore it the week before the Memorial. And I didn't play very well at the Memorial, but it was nothing to do with having a Whoop band on. And then I went to Canada the next week, and then I won, and that's when it sort of gained a lot of traction, and people were asking, what's on your wrist? And I said, oh, it's Whoop, and it's a heart rate tracker, but a sleep tracker. And I sort of tried to explain it and go into HRV and what that means, central nervous system and all this stuff. And obviously you can explain it much better than I can, but I was sort of telling everyone that I could that, this thing really helps, and it's really helped me. And I think from that, I knew a few golfers that were wearing it. Scott Stallings was one of the first ones, who's probably the fittest guy on the PGA Tour. Then once I won with it, it got a little more traction, and then you saw a lot more golfers wearing it. And it's become, I think you can't watch a PGA or European Tour event nowadays without seeing a guy with a Whoop on, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. For me, I discover who's wearing it just by watching television, and I'll just see it on people's wrists. Now, the phenomenon you're describing with heart rate variability, just for people who aren't familiar with that, heart rate variability is one of the things that we measure, and it's effectively looking at this relationship between sympathetic and parasympathetic activity, which is this lens into your autonomic nervous system.
Yeah.
And for high-performing individuals like yourself, you know that having your heart rate variability be higher is actually a sign that your body is repairing and recovering. And so a big theme for Whoop and really how the company came to be was this idea that it wasn't just what you're doing when you're exercising or you're competing. It was understanding how the other 20 hours of the day affect your body. And in particular, understanding things like heart rate variability and understanding slow wave sleep and understanding Rem sleep can play a huge role in how someone performs.
Yep.
And you've clearly, taken to that whole phenomenon. Have you always had a deep curiosity in technology or in understanding your body? Or is it more of recent?
It's more recent. I think I will say this, back in 2014, the last year that I won a couple of majors, I was training really hard. I had a men's health shoot coming up and I was training hard and probably for the wrong reasons, trying to look good for a magazine.
For men's health, yeah.
Exactly. So, but my whole thing, thinking back to that time, I slept terribly. Like
yeah.
I would get 6 hours a night and that would be like awesome for me. And looking back on it, I realized by wearing Whoop that I was overtraining. I was completely overtrained. I was sleeping terribly. And yes, okay, I look good and whatever, but it wasn't
optimal.
It wasn't doing anything for my performance.
Yeah.
So I was definitely I only need a few hours sleep a night, and sort of wore it as a badge of honor in a way that, I can get by and I'm good the next day. Where now, like, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I'm like, geez, I should really go for a nap. So it really, my view on sleep and rest and recovery has changed so much in the last few years.
Well, I've got a couple statistics here because you gave us permission to pull some data points for you, which are fascinating. So one thing that you may or may not know is that you average an hour and 54 minutes of REM sleep a night.
Okay.
And an hour and 48 minutes of slow wave sleep a night.
Okay.
So that's really high.
Okay.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So you're getting close to 4 hours of really restorative sleep a night. So for people listening to this who don't know what we're talking about, slow wave sleep is effectively the period where your body is producing about 95% of its human growth hormone.
Yeah.
So if you're a professional athlete and you're training or you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to get your body stronger, you're not actually getting stronger in the gym.
No.
You're breaking your muscles down. Slow wave sleep is this fascinating period of time where your body's repairing those muscles. And so you get a ridiculously high amount of slow wave sleep. The other thing, which I imagine is super important for golf, because we talked about the mental side, is REM sleep. Mm-hmm. So REM sleep is when you're effectively dreaming, and that's when you're improving cognitive function.
Yeah.
So those periods of sleep are so much more important than the other cycles of sleep, because there's periods where you're effectively in light sleep or awake. Mm-hmm. And so if you can maximize the amount of time that you're getting slow wave and REM sleep, it plays this enormously important role in your recovery. Mm-hmm. Now, if we look at a couple statistics, one of my favorite, and this sort of sparked the conversation, is at the Fedex Cup, you had to play 31 holes on the final day.
Yep.
And you woke up with a 86% recovery.
Yeah.
So recovery is 0 to 100%, the higher the better. And it's effectively saying, based on your heart rate variability and quality of sleep, this is how prepared we think you are to perform. You got over 7.5 hours of sleep. What was it like? How do you even look at that information during a tournament?
Yeah, so it's the first thing I check in the morning. So
That's awesome.
I get up and I go into my Whoop app and it says sleep detected, so process. So I'll hit the process button, it's the first thing I do, and I wait for that score to come up. And I've always said, and this is something, and this goes into the mental side, if I don't get a good recovery score, that's fine. I still have to go and perform, and I still have to, but I always say, if I've looked at my data, which I have, and you guys have, any time that I have got a recovery in the green, I have performed well. There's been times where I've had recoveries in the red and I haven't, and I have performed well also, but I feel like I've performed well in spite of
your body.
In spite of my body instead of because of my body.
Yeah.
So that's the difference, because I never want to wake up and see a bad recovery score and think, geez, today's not going to be a good day, because that's just not realistic. That can't happen. So, but if I can optimize my recovery and I can do the things we talked about, cold shower, blue light blocking glasses, eat a couple hours before bedtime, read. I find reading in bed helps, but specifically a book, like with pages and instead of on your phone.
I think that's important.
It is very important. All of that goes into me trying to get the best possible score the next day. But when I woke up that final round of the Fedex Cup, knowing I had a long day ahead of me, and I saw that I had 86% recovery, I was like, well, I know I'm ready. I know I'm ready to go and do this.
That's energizing, right?
Exactly.
And then you play 31 holes. Yeah. On a day like that, are you changing anything about the way you're preparing, just knowing that you're going to have to be in competition for that much longer?
I think as golfers, we're used to getting up early, and that's sort of, it's always been that way. I think the big thing for me in that was, what do I do with my time in between rounds? I had to play 13 holes in the morning, and I played well, but what I do with these 3.5 hours that I've got. So I went in and I made sure to eat enough and keep myself fueled, because it's going to be a really long day. I didn't quite nap, but I relaxed.
Yeah.
Which was a big thing.
And what does relaxed look like?
I mean, lying in the locker room with your feet up, chatting to someone, or maybe closing your eyes, or doing something, but just more of a, I could get back to taking your mind away from what's coming up.
Yeah.
Because another one of Cal Newport's books, Deep Work, is the fact that you can only really do 4 hours a day of real, intense, deep work. And so the more you can relax and take those little breaks so that you can put your all into what's very important that day, that's a big thing.
That's a huge phenomenon I've learned from high-performing people like yourself, is to be on when you're on, but when you're off, don't be half on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the phenomenon you're describing.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then you went on to win the FedEx Cup that day, which
I went on, I win the FedEx Cup, which was, last year was a great year, but that just sort of, there was a lot riding on that day as well, because 2 weeks prior in Memphis, I played with Brooks Koepka in the final group, and he was the #1 player in the world, and he dusted me. I played not very well, but he played really good.
Yeah.
And it was an opportunity for me to, not get him back, but at least put in a better performance than I put in that day. And I did. So that was one of the most rewarding things. The fact that, again, I learned from some of my mistakes a couple of weeks before, and I was able to right those, and I was better that day than I was 2 weeks earlier, which made a difference.
Now, how much for you is golf competing against yourself versus someone that you're standing next to on the first tee, like a Brooks Koepka or anyone else?
It's mostly about yourself. I mean, golf is you and the golf course. The only opponent you have is the golf course and yourself sometimes, right? Because self-doubt creeps in, or things get into your head, or there's certain tee shots and courses that you don't like, and I mean, that's overcoming that. You don't need to worry about anyone else. I think people get into this habit in golf where they start to try to create these rivalries, and they start to think, well, it's him versus him, and these are the 2 best players in the world, but it's really everyone for themselves, and if you can focus on yourself 100% and get the best out of what you do, it doesn't matter what anyone else does.
My lens into that has been through watching Whoop grow in golf, because my sense is that professional golfers are much more collaborative than other sports.
Yeah.
And if I think about some other sports, people will be kind of more to themselves. They don't want to reveal any of their secrets.
Yeah.
Whereas I've just seen how Whoop spread. It's pretty clear that you guys are talking to each other about some of the things that you're using and trying. And
yeah, it's different.
It's a different culture.
It is a very different culture. Even, guys will share the same coach in golf. That would never happen in tennis. If I know that Tiger Woods isn't comfortable hitting a certain shot, I can't go and place this golf ball in that spot and say, okay, hit the shot. Where in tennis, a guy, if Nadal plays Federer, Nadal just hits it high to Federer's backhand all day, because he knows that's going to break down eventually.
That's the edge,
That is, so as golfers, we can't do that. Sometimes a golf course doesn't suit your eye, or it might fit someone else's game a little bit better, but at the end of the day, it's totally up to what you do, and no one else can influence that.
Now, one interesting thing about Whoop is that you can see how different environments, travel, et cetera, affect your body.
Yeah.
You were just at altitude. Mm-hmm. Talk about how that affected your data and your process.
Was crazy. I played in Mexico City last week, which is at 8,000 feet. And it was, again, talking about golfers and being collaborative, and a lot of people on the tour wearing Whoop.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, what's your recovery score? I can't get, I haven't been in the green this
That's
week.
So cool.
I'm in the red and in the yellow. But yeah, it's just your body's working harder to try to, get some oxygen in there. And even the first couple of days in the gym, it was like, whoa, this is, even on the course, walking between shots up hills, you're really
notice
trying
your heart rate's a little more elevated.
Yeah, and I think it was. I looked at my heart rate on Sunday, and there was a lot of spikes up above 120. Which for me on a golf course isn't really
unusual.
Very unusual. But I was playing. Final rounds are usually a little more stressful anyway. But then with the altitude, with the hills, there's a lot of there was maybe a good 10 or 15 times during that round where my heart rate got above 120, which is unusual for me.
Now, will you focus that much on what your heart rate was at different moments during the round, or the overall strain, or is that for you more of a general guidance?
So strain for me is more, it's a general guidance, but I know if I on Monday got home, we had a few friends over to our house. I had a couple of glasses of wine. I woke up on Tuesday morning with a terrible recovery.
Yeah.
And I was meant to work out that day, and I said, no,
it's not worth it.
My body needs another day of rest. So I will, when I wake up in the morning, I can see that, keep your strain below a 12, or I usually adhere to that, because, even if you feel okay, your body's still recovering. It's not in the right place. But, like today, I woke up and I was in the green, and, rebounded pretty well from that low one. So first thing I did was get in the gym and get a good workout in and feel much better.
Well, one interesting thing, when you come back from altitude, your body will respond positively to that.
Yeah.
So that may in part be how you bounce back quickly from alcohol.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about alcohol before we started on the podcast. How have you seen alcohol affect your sleep and your Whoop data?
I love red wine. I collect red wine. We have a cellar at home. It's a hobby for me.
Great.
But before I wore Whoop, I would have drank a lot more than I do now. Especially, there would be times at tournaments where I'd have a glass of red wine with dinner.
Yeah.
And yes, that's okay, but doing it too often then leads to, not great scores and not great sleep. And but my alcohol consumption is way down from wearing Whoop.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about alcohol is how dramatically it affects your sleep.
Yeah.
And in turn, it makes you get less slow wave sleep, less REM sleep, and it lowers your heart rate variability, which is that relationship we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. So it puts you more into a sympathetic
state
in your nervous system. And for me, my resting heart rate average is 45.
Which is low.
Which is low, but I've looked at other people that wear Whoop, and my resting heart rate with alcohol is at least 10 beats.
Isn't that amazing?
Faster, if not more. So I think it actually affects me more than other people.
Right.
You can see some people, it might be a few beats faster or whatever, but if the other night when I had those 3 glasses of wine, my average is 45, and that night it was 59, so 14 beats higher.
Wow.
Which is just crazy.
It just shows you. That's one of the biggest forms of behavior change I think Whoop has had on everyone, not just professional athletes, is just seeing how alcohol affects your body.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then sometimes, I was very lucky that today I bounced back from that, but there has been times where I listen to the podcast, the 4-day hangover.
Yeah.
Thing, and that is real. It's
a real phenomenon.
It takes you, at least 3 or 4 days to get back to where you need to be to perform. So, I definitely think twice now about, having that glass of wine, or,
It's a bummer too. I like drinking as much as the next guy.
Yeah,
it just helps you focus, I think, to recognize how it affects your body.
I think it's a little bit like the phone thing. It can become a habit, but if you can do it intentionally and, okay, I'm okay knowing that tomorrow I've got nothing going on and I can have a bad recovery score if I have these couple of glasses of wine, and that's fine. But it's, again, that's the one thing that Whoop's taught me more than anything else is what are good habits for me to wake up the next day and be ready to do
the
what I do.
best version of yourself.
Exactly.
Now, do you experiment at all with things like melatonin or magnesium?
Yeah.
What do you like to take?
So I take a magnesium supplement every day.
I do too, by the way.
Yeah, and I've actually, so there's a few golfers now that are like sponsored by CBD companies.
Oh, interesting.
So I've taken a couple of times CBD oil with melatonin.
Okay.
And I've really liked it. I don't want to do it all the time, but there's been some nights where I'm like, I really want to sleep, and your mind might be racing. You're thinking about some stuff, and I've probably taken it like once or twice a week for the last month, and it's helped me.
And on those specific nights, do you notice the next day more REM sleep or slow wave or higher recovery? Anything in particular? Maybe you fall asleep faster?
So I think my latency's probably been a little bit quicker.
So sleep latency is the amount of time that it takes to fall asleep.
Yes.
It sounds like that's shorter when...
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just helps me relax. Sometimes I'll, instead of maybe taking a supplement, I'll put on the Calm app and like listen to a sleep story or listen to something like that, and that helps me sort of wind down and drift off. But that's the only supplement that I've taken that and melatonin as well. But I take magnesium. I think zinc's pretty good as well, but I don't take zinc. But I take all omega-3s and all the stuff.
So they're the normal vitamins.
Just normal vitamins. I think so. I think anything that can be like anti-inflammatory and is a good thing. But yes, but the CBD oil with the melatonin I've taken a couple of times, and I feel like it's helped a little bit.
If we go back to altitude for half a second, so I'm looking at your data here for the Mexico Championship, and it's interesting. You were actually getting a lot of sleep, but to your point, your recovery scores weren't as high as they are at most tournaments.
Yeah.
So that probably shows that the altitude was getting to your HRV a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I was doing everything right to try to get good sleep, and maybe I wasn't there long enough to adjust.
So when did you arrive?
So I arrived Monday night.
So Monday night, yeah. That's almost like a challenging period of time where sometimes it's like the first night there or the second night there can be actually you might be able to get through it.
Okay.
Just like the first night.
Yeah.
We worked with the U.S. Olympic swim team, I remember a few years ago, and they had this fascinating moment for the Olympic trials where they showed up like 3 days before the event. And it turned out on their Whoop scores, they had a high recoveries rate the next day, and then they dipped.
Okay.
And then they actually came back. So they timed it as poorly as you could, where like all of the recoveries were lowest on the day of the trials. And then when they traveled the next time, they actually got there like a week in advance. And so it was high and then dip and then it came back.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how, it's probably a little different for everyone at altitude. But the good news is you weren't in the red during the tournament.
No, yeah, no, I try my best to not.
And it's probably empowering for you to know that you're so focused on this sort of thing, whereas someone else who's maybe not measuring these things or managing them might be at a disadvantage, than you at the tournament.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going back to having every little advantage that you can, because I feel the game of golf right now is so bunched that if you can differentiate yourself, or you can do something that other guys aren't doing, then it has to be a little advantage.
It was interesting. I think 4 of the top 5, like on Sunday, were Whoop wearers.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's becoming the norm. It's it's a very, I think all of this recovery stuff, it's still in its infancy, and there's so much more that we can learn about it. Yeah. But the fact that it has had this following and people are really latching onto this idea that, during the night when we sleep, if we can optimize that, we're going to perform better the next day. And like, who doesn't like sleeping?
Yeah.
Like it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, it's a good thing to be good at.
Exactly.
Now, if you think about where you are today in your career and we reflect back on, younger Rory, age 18, age 20, what are some of the things from a mental standpoint that you're more focused on now?
So one of the things, people can look back at my career and they do, and they see the times where I've played really well and I've won major championships and I've, done all that stuff. And every time they'll say, what was different that week? And I say, well, I was just in a really good place. But what does that mean? So for me, what I've tried to do the last couple of years is think about, okay, how can I get myself into that mental place more often? And how can I put a structure around it where, I actually have control of it? Because, I felt like there was just some weeks I turned up and I felt good and I played well.
Yeah,
and it was more by accident. So for me, it's about trying to put a structure around everything and again, learning from my habits and, okay, what enables me to do this well and when do I feel good and I've started to read a lot more. And a lot of the stuff is self-help and stoicism, and I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday and Cal Newport and these guys, but I like it. I've gotten into it, and I think say maybe 5 years ago when I was younger, I never liked embracing a challenge. I loved when it was easy and everything was going well because, who doesn't? But yeah, I've really tried to embrace the times when it is a challenge and things aren't going your way, because that is ultimately what'll make you better.
What are some of the tips that you've picked up regarding the mental side of it that you feel like have helped you? I mean, obviously, you're reading a lot.
I try to practice all like the P's, so patience, poise, perspective. Perspective to me has always been a big thing. You're trying to put everything in perspective.
Yeah.
So if you're having a rough day on the course, who cares, right? There's other things in life that are much more important. So, not trying to make things bigger than what they are.
Yeah.
That's always been helpful for me. If I'm having a bad round, I can always think, well, when I get off the course, my wife's going to be there and I'm still going to get a hug from her, and my mom and dad are still, so there's a lot of different things that you can do. But, for me, preparation is big. If I know that I've prepared and I've done everything that I can to enable myself to play well, some days it's just not going to happen, and that's fine. But I at least want to go into these tournaments knowing, well, I feel like I've done everything I can. I don't feel ill-prepared, because if you feel ill-prepared, you're panicked and you're not really where you want to be. So preparation for me has been huge, and learning what that good preparation is, because it's different for everyone.
Totally.
Some people like to practice more, some people like to play more. And what I've started to do over the last few years, I used to love to just hit balls on the range, and I've started to play more and try to simulate certain conditions and try to, even in practice rounds at tournaments, I'll have a bet with my caddy Harry, and I'll always try to, for one night that tournament week, we always play for dinner. So I'll always,
that's cool.
So he'll set me a target and say, okay, if you shoot 64 better today, I'll pay for dinner. So then it's like a little mini pre-tournament before the tournament starts, just to get me in that mode of, going through my routine and doing the right things and, just getting into that mindset.
When you do a practice round like that, how much does it feel like you've prepared for that like a real round? And how different does it feel in the moment?
It's hard. So I try to do... So we usually have to do these pro-ams on Wednesdays,
right,
which are tough sometimes.
A bit of a distraction, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But in a way, you're getting an extra look at the golf course. So if you can sort of use that to your advantage. So that's when, maybe the first 9 holes of that pro-am, I'll try to spend time with my amateur partners and, help them out, whatever. But then the second 9, once Harry sees that I'm losing interest, that's when he'll say, right, concentrate, 9 holes, shoot 3 under par, everything in the hole. So tries to get me in at least a little bit of a focus mode before going into the first day. The next
totally.
day.
It's actually kind of surprising that that's the day before the tournament.
Yeah.
It's almost like it'd be better if it was a Tuesday or Monday.
Yeah, some of them have started to adopt doing like Tuesday pro-ams and even Monday pro-ams. But the nice thing with the bigger tournaments, the majors, the players, they don't have pro-ams. So, you can get into your sort of focused mindset when you need to.
One thing I find just fascinating in talking to you is you're literally the best in the world at your sport, and yet you are so deeply curious. And the fact that you're reading self-help books when you're the best is sort of amazing, right? And I think it should be inspiring for anyone. I know it's certainly inspiring for me. It's just this point of view that like you can keep getting better and you can keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a little bit of all the outpouring that's come out for Kobe Bryant and how much people talked about how he was just constantly learning. And you guys have some similarities in that regard too, in that, you both of you sort of had these shortened school experiences, right? Yeah. And so it's interesting that you've tried to apply that in a lot of ways to your life, is just like diving deep on your own education in other ways.
So that's one of the things I say to people now is I wish I had this hunger and thirst for learning back when I was in school that I do now.
I feel a little bit the same way.
But I think you need to figure out what's important and what really like gets into you or like for me, reading these books has been, if I found a subject in school that I liked so much, I probably would have stayed in school, but I didn't. So I think it's been this journey for me of okay, what do I really enjoy? And I enjoy reading about people throughout history that have gone on to do great things, and what can I learn from them and what can I apply to my own life? And so that's the fun part of it. And yeah, again, I just because I'm ranked the best at what I do, it doesn't mean I can't get better.
Totally.
And I the day that I stop trying to get better is the day that I'm gonna, hang the clubs up and do something else, because I feel like that's what's led me to this point. I'm asking guys, how do you play a certain shot, or what do you think about when you're putting, or how do you read a certain, I'm always just, I think it's either it's in you or it's not. And
it has to be in you.
Yeah, and for me, it always has been that way.
Because talent can really only get you so far, and then hard work can only really get you so far. I think that deep curiosity, that can be a huge edge.
I think so. There's always been this stigma with me over the years, is he's just insanely talented, and but.
Does that bother you?
It does bother me, because I know how much work that I've put in, and some people, people only see me at golf tournaments, and they I try to spend as the least amount of time at the golf course as I can, because I want my time. I want it to be efficient, and I want to do my warm up and do my practice, play the golf, and get out of there. I'm not spending 12 hours a day at that place because I don't need to. Yeah. And it's not good for me. But I think people see that and they say, well, he just shows up and he does his thing, but they don't see when I'm home, and they don't see all the stuff that I do. And I did an interview a couple of weeks ago where the journalist asked me something similar. Does it get to you that people just see, say that you're talented? And I said, there's two guys where I live down in Jupiter that practice harder than anyone else, and it's myself and Justin Thomas. And there's no...
Justin Thomas, whoop guy too.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no coincidence why we're two of the best players in the world. I see how hard JT works, and he sees how hard that I work, and we, he's only child as well. We sort of have some similarities.
Cool. And I didn't know that.
So I have a lot of respect for JT, because I see how hard he works, and I think he tries to put as much into his game as I do. And again, there's no coincidence why we're two of the top players in the world.
I imagine you've gotten to know a number of really fascinating people just in the last couple decades. Who are some people that you've learned a lot from, or tried to pick little insights on your own journey? Yeah,
I've been lucky enough. I've met a lot of really cool sports people, and some people that I didn't. Not that I didn't like before I met them, but I wasn't really that interested, or I come, from the UK. Soccer is huge for us, so, meeting a soccer player, meeting someone that played for Man United back in the day is huge for me. But meeting some of the athletes in American sports, it didn't mean that much to me. But I met Tom Brady for the first time a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
And we've had a really good relationship since. And to sort of pick his brain about things, he is the most competitive person I have ever met.
That's cool.
It doesn't matter whether he's on the football field or whether he's on the golf course. Whatever he is doing, he is so competitive, and it's this drive and this passion and this fire to be the best at what he does. And I love that about Tom, and I think that is why he's had such a great career. But he's been someone that I've really looked up to and didn't really know much about before I met him. Like, I knew that he was a quarterback for the Patriots and he was a really good player, but
you weren't an NFL fan.
I wasn't really, yeah. But then getting to know him, I'm like, God, this guy is like so cool.
Wired.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's great to see. Even at, I hope when I'm his age, I still have the passion for golf that he has for football, because he is like so into what he does.
As we go forwards with Whoop here, what are some things that you're excited about for the product, or hope that we can introduce or provide?
I don't know. Obviously I'm really happy with what you guys do right now.
Sure.
Sleep thing is cool. Obviously the study that was published a couple of weeks ago in Arizona is awesome. Sort of validates, if you want to talk about that a bit more.
Well, so you're referring to the sleep validation that we had. It's now published in the Clinical Journal of Sleep Medicine, and it says that Whoop is the most accurate non-invasive sleep monitor, which for us is like, we've been working at that for 8 years now, awesome. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah, so I think knowing that I wear something on my body that is the most accurate out there is really cool. And we were talking just before this podcast about the metabolic unit that you guys are partnering with and using that technology. The Pinoy integration.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something I'm excited to try out as well. But God, you guys are, doing a heck of a job. And
thanks, man.
It's really helped me. And I think I'm living a healthier life because of it, and I'm also performing better, and my career's become better because of it as well. So, and I think other players in the golf world have seen that and have started to wear it, and I think it's just going to keep growing and growing. I think it's awesome. Who's
the most surprising person you've met who had a Whoop strap on?
I saw Tiger was wearing one for a little bit.
Yeah, so I
messaged him and I said, "Oh, you're wearing a Whoop." He goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't help me sleep." I said, "Well, that's not the point." I said, "It measures your sleep." Because Tiger's a notoriously bad sleeper.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated about that in his career, that he's been so successful without sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was pretty cool that he was on it for a little bit.
Yeah.
I said, "It doesn't put you to sleep. It just tells you how you sleep." So, but I thought it was pretty cool that he was wearing it for a little bit to just, again, someone that's the best at what he does and trying to get better and trying to figure out, okay, what can I do?
Yeah, that's the thing that's amazed me so much, even from the earliest days, just how willing the world's bests are to get that extra 0.00 whatever. And in the case of Whoop, it looks like it can be more than that as an advantage.
Definitely. How many hours in our lifetime do we sleep?
It's a third of our lives, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you can do that right, it makes the other 2/3 a lot easier.
Well, look, man, I just want you to know it's a real pleasure to get to do this with you, and it's such an inspiration to have you talk about the value that you've gotten out of the product. Because for all of us who are grinding at the office and just hoping that we're creating something in this world that people get value out of, it's really inspiring to see you using it.
Thank you. No, I again, it's helped me an awful lot, and I know it can help everyone, whether you're a professional athlete or someone that just wants to feel better or perform better in your daily life or your job. It can help everyone. So thank you.
All right, well, thanks, brother. Thanks for coming on the podcast. This has been
awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.